Hi everyone, this is the narration for the PowerPoint for Unit 6, which really deals with Chapter 5. We're going to look at tracking the progress, some very basic techniques for that. The objectives for this unit are, when you're done, you should be able to demonstrate an understanding of the purpose of progress tracking. You should be able to create and save a project baseline plan. You should be able to track a plan as scheduled. You should be able to update a project plan to indicate completion percentages and to update a project plan using actual values for a task. So the first thing we want to talk about is the whole idea of understanding progress tracking. So up to now, we've put our projects in, we've set relationships, we put in costs, and now the project has started, right? So how do we keep track of how it's progressing as we move through it? So tracking actuals is essential to properly managing a project. It is as vital or more vital really than setting it up correctly at the beginning. When you properly track project performance and compare it with the original, which is called the baseline, you can answer such questions as, hey, are the tasks starting on time as planned? Are they finishing as planned? If not, what is the impact on the overall finish date, right? Because that's really what you're trying to get to is, am I going to get this project done on time? So if you have tasks that are slipping, then how is that going to affect? 2, are resources spending more or less time to complete tasks? So particularly when they're spending more time than allocated, why is that happening? Is the plan wrong? Do we need to update it and more accurately reflect how much time they're spending on things? 3, are higher than anticipated task costs driving up overall cost? So is more being spent on tasks, either mostly it would be through more time being spent on them or more resources being allocated. So how is that affecting the overall cost of the project? So those are just 3 very common questions that you can answer by comparing actual to the baseline or what you had going in. So projects support several ways to track your progress, and when determining a tracking method, think about the level of detail or control you and your stakeholders require. Excuse me. Does it need to be very detailed, or can it be more high level? There's no right or wrong, and it could be a mix depending on things. So let's look at this. Levels of tracking details can go from the simplest to the most comprehensive. So I have 4 levels of tracking details that we have here. The first one is the simplest, and that's to record project work as scheduled. This level works best if everything in the project occurs exactly as planned, which we know probably does not happen. 2, record each task's percentage of completion, either at a precise value or at a preset increment, such as 25, 50, 75, and 100%. So you're not getting specific detail here, but just, okay, we're 25% done with that task. We're 50% done. 3, record the actual start and finish dates and the actual and remaining work and duration values for each task or assignment. So this one would take a little more management time, more data to put those in. And then the last one is track assignment level work by time period. This is the most detailed level of tracking. You record actual work per day, per week, or at some other interval that makes sense for your project. Because different portions of a project sometimes have different tracking needs, you might use a combination of all of these 4 approaches within a single plan. It's not one or, it's you pick one and that's the only one you can use. So we've talked a little bit about baseline. Let's give a little definition. So a baseline captures the original scheduled start, scheduled finish, and duration values, in addition to the work and cost values per task, resource, and assignment. Additionally, the baseline captures work and cost values distributed over time, and that's considered time-phased values. So when you create a baseline and save it, Project takes a copy of those values and saves it. It's very important that you keep, once you have most of your tasks in there, most of your data, and before the project starts, that you capture what you anticipate these values to be. So you want to save a baseline in these situations. You have developed the plan as fully as possible. So a note here is that you can still add tasks, resources, or assignments even though they didn't exist in your baseline. You haven't started entering actual values, such as the task's percentage of completed. That's, you'd want to do a baseline save. And you want to save subsequent baselines up to a maximum of 11. And then here are the baseline fields that are saved. Okay, and they're broken down by, these are the task fields, resource fields, and assignment fields that are stored. So you can have up to 11 different baselines. The first one's just called baseline, and then each one after has a number after it. Okay. Let me go back to that. And it's so, okay, let me track a plan. So, okay, so we're going to move into tracking a plan as scheduled. So this first one is tracking a plan as scheduled. This is the simplest approach. So you track the actual work as, indicate that it's proceeding as planned. So you said, okay, so the example here is the first week of a 5-week project has elapsed, and all the tasks that were supposed to start and finish within that have done so, right? So you can quickly do that in this update project dialog box, right? So this is the nice approach if everything's beginning and concluding as it was planned. So that's really nice. That's a nice, easy way. You can just mark it done because it was done and it's good. Track a plan as scheduled. So that's the same thing that we're doing here. Oops, sorry. When you record progress through a specific date, so we were talking about the first week of a 5-week, so you put then everything's done that was supposed to be done up through that date. Then project will calculate the actual duration, the remaining duration, any actual costs, and any other values up to the date that you entered, right? So this is a good approach even if you don't, if the actual work and cost value generated by project don't match exactly, but like they're close enough for tracking purposes. And whether or not it's close enough is up to the project manager and the stakeholders to determine how precise this needs to be. You know, you don't want to spend more time tracking than the tasks themselves, right? So if everything that was supposed to be done that first week is done, you can mark them all done. And then project's just going to update, and it may not be exactly moving forward what's going to happen, but it's close enough. So once again, that's up to the project manager, or how the project has been set to be updated. Okay, so the second one is to enter a task completion percentage. So, and this would be, so after work begins on a task, you can quickly record its progress as a percentage, right? So when you put in a percentage that's greater than 0, project will set the task actual start date to match its scheduled start date, right? So let's say 10% is done. So you go in to put 10%, project's going to take that projected start date and make it an actual start date, and that it's moved 10% through. So project would calculate the actual duration, what's left, costs involved, and any other values based on that percentage. So for example, if you specify that a 4-day task is 25% complete, project calculates that it has 1 day of actual duration and 3 days remaining. So you don't have to figure that out. We've got a 4-day task, and given that the whole day is spent on it, you're 25, so that's 1/4 of the 4-day task. So project's going to automatically have actual duration of 1 and remaining of 3 based on that percentage. So completion techniques for using the percentage is you can use the increments that are provided, 0, 25, 50, 75, 100. You can add the percent column, complete column to the table in task view. So it's right there, and you can either use these set values or you could type your own. You can enter any percentage value you want in the task information dialog box. So you can bring that up and put, 13% or 22%. You can use the mouse to set the progress over on the right side of the Gantt chart on the bar. So you would click on the bar and it would be able to set the progress there. So these are 4 ways that you can actually put these percentages in. So some of the suggestions and tips for using this: use a simple tracking technique for projects with short-term duration, like to-do list type of tasks, and then just use the 0, 50, 100. So 0 means you haven't started the task. 50% means that it's started, but it's not done. 100% means it's done. So it's almost like flags: not started, started, done, right? Instead, you can set this in your mind or in the standards for the project. If you're using these percentages, that's what those correlate to: not started, started, done. If you collect the actual start date of a task, record the date and then record a percentage complete. So by default, project shows the Gantt bars in front of non-working times like weekends. However, project can show non-working times in front of a task bar, visually indicating no work will occur. So that's something you could do if that's a way you want to proceed. Okay. Third way, enter actual values for a task. So this is a more detailed way to keep your schedule up to date. So this would be the third way. And that's to record what actually happens for each task in your plan. So you can record each task's actual start, finish, work, or duration values. So for example, when you enter 3 days of actual duration on a task with 5 days of scheduled duration and 40 hours of work, and 40 hours of work, that should say of, sorry. Project calculates the actual work to be 24 hours, the percent completed to be 60, and the remaining duration to be 2 days, right? So we have 5 days at 40 hours. We've worked 3 days on it, so what does that really mean? Well, that means you're 60% done, 3/5. That means out of 40 hours, you've worked 24, and we have 2 days left to work, which would be 2/5, right? When you record actual duration, project recalculates the task's essential schedule values, such as percent complete and remaining duration. And that's what this example shows. So you actually put the 3 days of actual, and it'll calculate the other ones, the other 2 elements. So here's some rules for value updates. When you enter a task's actual start date, project moves the scheduled start date to match the actual, right? So you schedule it to start on February 10th. It doesn't really start until February 12th. You put that actual in, and project's gonna match them. When you enter a task's actual finish date, project moves the scheduled finish date to match the actual and sets the task to be 100% complete. So whether the task finishes before or after the scheduled, it's going to make that scheduled finish date match the actual, and it's going to set the percent to 100% complete. When you enter a task's actual work value, project recalculates the task's remaining work value, if any. When you enter a task's actual duration, if it's less than the scheduled duration, project subtracts the duration, the actual, from the schedule to determine remaining. Okay, so let's think about that. So let's say we have a duration of 3 days, or let's just do 30 hours. And you have actually worked on 100 or 1 day or a third, and it's less than the scheduled duration. Project will subtract the actual to determine the remaining from the scheduled. So when you enter a task's actual duration, if it is equal to the scheduled, project sets it to be 100%. So this one, if it's less, it's going to determine how much is left. This one, it's going to set it 100. If you enter a task's actual duration and it's longer than what it was supposed to, it took longer than was anticipated, project adjusts the scheduled duration to match the actual and sets the duration to 100% complete. Okay? It just took longer, so it would adjust. Because your plan is updated with actuals, your scheduled plan is going to change, right? Every time you make these changes, project is readjusting the schedule. Your baseline plan will not change, and that's why we save it, because you can always go back. When you look at your project, it's going to be real time with all the updates, so the dates and all of that's going to change. If you want to go back and see, well, what did I originally schedule this for? That's what the baseline plans are for. Okay? Project supports multiple ways of recording actuals. You can do it in the tracking table, and this works when you want to update actuals and see remaining duration and cost values in a single table, right? So you want to update the actuals and see how it affects. Recording actuals in the update task dialog. This works well when you want to focus on a single task or update tasks in view that don't support tables like a networking diagram. So a note here, when you're entering updates in the update task dialog box, values are not dynamically updated and only update after you click OK. So on the tracking, it does it real time. Update tasks, you have to OK and get out of that dialog box for the changes to be reflected, right? So don't think that just by typing in the numbers in the update task dialog box it's going to alter things. You have to actually OK that. So there's issues always with project tracking. So evaluating a project's status can be tricky. So here's some things that are just some points that you might want to think about. For many tasks, evaluating a completion percentage is difficult. When is a programmer's code 50% done? No. When is a new motor assembly 50% complete, right? So it's hard to know when you're at. It's not often clear cut when you're at these percents. In many cases it's a best guess effort, and it does pose some risk if you guess incorrectly. And a lot of that comes with experience and similar projects and how things go. The elapsed portion of a task's duration is not always equal to the amount of work accomplished. So this is a really important one. A task might require relatively little effort initially, but might require more work as time passes. And that's what's called a backloaded task. So when 50% of its duration has elapsed, it's far less than 50% of the total work completed, right? So duration, or that time, does not equal 50% of the total work. Project tracks both. So you want to understand that there's a percent complete, which tracks the percentage of the task's duration that has been completed, and then percent work complete tracks the percentage of the task's work that has been completed. They're not necessarily the same thing. So that's an important concept to be able to understand. The resources assigned to a task might have different criteria for what constitutes the task's completion than the criteria determined by either the project manager or the resources assigned to successor tasks. So not everybody agrees what done means, right? And so that's something that you want to make sure you understand, is that people have a concept of what having a task done means. So how you can counteract this is really with good communication and planning that will help you avoid or mitigate these and other problems. And so that begins with a development of a proper task duration, understanding what that duration is going to be. A development of a good status reporting period, like, okay, every week, every month, every whatever, I'm going to do some status reporting. I'm going to communicate where we're at. Good documentation, well communicated task completion criteria. So that's back to this, what does it mean to be done? That helps prevent issues or surprises. Okay, this is important. All right, so that's it for this chart, for this PowerPoint and this content. There's a lot of important information in this chapter. So the next movie I'm going to have you watch is on the lab. All right, guys, thank you.